All right, guys, we are going to go over some stuff on taxes today. Just take some notes here on some of the basic information on the different types of taxes and some tax documents you need to be aware of. Okay, so I titled it "Where Did All My Earnings Go?" because many of you guys have jobs. So as you look at your pay stubs, you'll see there's a lot taken out in taxes, and I know what all that stuff means. Right, so the first term I want you guys to understand is this thing called a W-4. So these are some of the documents and forms that if you have a job, you probably are familiar with. All right, so this is the form that you'll fill out when you get hired, and your employer is going to ask you to fill it out so it identifies how much is going to be withheld from each of your paychecks in taxes. So we call it withholdings because as many of you know already, because you've filed your tax returns, you get some of that money back. So it's withheld until the time you file your tax return. Okay, so the W-4 ultimately identifies, out of your gross pay, which is a term we'll talk about on the next video with pay stubs. Your gross pay is your total amount you made in the course of that pay period, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, however often you get paid. So out of that gross pay, that total amount earned, how much is going to be withheld in taxes. Okay. So when you fill out that form, which we'll go through one here in a minute, there's two terms that are going to come up: the allowance and dependence. Okay, so as you get older and you have kids someday, or you're taking care of a parent or someone else, these are things that will be counted as dependents or allowances for you. So it actually allows you to have less withheld from each of your paychecks. So in other words, you have more money in your pocket to spend now. Okay, now obviously that sounds great, but if your parents are claiming you as a dependent, you can't claim yourself an allowance. All right, so that's where it gets a little confusing. So and I always kind of explain to my students that you'd be considered a dependent if you count on someone else, an adult, your parents, for three basic needs: your food, clothing, and shelter. If someone else pays for the majority of those three things, then you are considered a dependent, and someone else can claim you on their taxes, so they can actually save some money. You can't do it both, all right? Because if you both are claiming it, then be a red flag at the IRS when you are filing your taxes. The other form that will come up is called an I-9 form, which this is going to be something filled out by your employer after you get hired. This is just something that is clarifying that you are eligible to work in the United States, whether you're the right age, you're a resident, permanent resident, you're a citizen. All that stuff will come in to play with an I-9 form. So this is what the W-4 looks like, and some of you guys may have remembered filling this out when you got hired, and it is kind of confusing. So you might remember being like, what the heck does all this stuff mean? Maybe you took it home to your parents to help fill it out. At the end of the day, guys, this is, you can't necessarily go wrong on this, because how much you're going to owe in taxes is going to be more determined when you fill out your 1040 tax return. So you can fill this out kind of two ways. One, you can fill it out where you have a very little money taken out of every paycheck, which is going to guarantee you a tax return when you fill out your return. Or you can fill out the other end and have very little taken out of your every paycheck. All right, but then you're going to probably owe something at the end of the year. Okay, so you just got to be mindful of that. At the end of the day, most of you guys aren't going to have many numbers written here because you guys are teenagers, and you can only claim yourself as being single most likely. Okay, unless you have a child or something, then you can start putting some of these numbers in. But most likely you're going to have a 0 or 1 as your total number. So if you look down the lines there, line A, enter 1 for yourself. All right, if you can claim yourself, basically, meaning that you're not dependent. So you might put a 1 there, but most likely you put a 0. Line D, enter 1 if you will file as married, filing jointly. If you're married, then you can put a 1, but most likely you're not married, so go ahead and put 0. Line C, enter 1 if you file as the head of the household. So if you're the main money maker in the house, you put a 1. But again, if you're a teenager, you're probably going to put a 0 there. All right, so you get to line D. This is probably the one spot that some of you guys would have a spot to put a 1, because it says enter 1 if you are single. Most likely you guys are all not married, so you could put a 1 there. And then as you go from there, it's all about, the rest of line D is being married. Line E is going to, and F will be dealing with whether or not you have dependents or children. So unless you have a kid, the rest of them you'll have zeros entered all the way down. So once you get down to line H, most likely you'd either add up all zeros or maybe have a 1. And that's fine, because with what you guys are going to pay in taxes, or what you're going to actually make, you're going to get all your federal money back, all right? Because under the new tax laws, the first $12,000 you make is going to be tax-free with the federal government. So if you make less than $12,000 in the course of a year, every dollar you pay in taxes to the federal government, you should get back. Okay, now state government, that's different. So you'll still owe some money to the state of Illinois. You're not going to get all that money back. Okay, all right, so we'll flip on to some of the notes on taxes. All right, so just some basic terminology we're going to go through today. So taxes, just simply a sum of money demanded by the government. The IRS is our U.S. government agency that's responsible for tax collection. So who's going to be in charge of making sure that you're paying your taxes? So you're going to file your tax returns through to get some of that money back. So I just always make sure we realize why we have to pay taxes, right? So the importance of it. It's one of those necessary evils that we don't like, but we have to do. So what public services and goods in your community are funded by tax dollars? So think back to when we covered public goods and public services, all those things are covered through our tax dollars, whether it's roads, our schools, our military protection, police protection, fire protection, all those things that we like to have around and are necessary for our daily lives are going to be important. That's why we have to pay those taxes. So who writes our tax laws? Okay, I ask this question because usually the first answer I get oftentimes in class is the President of the United States writes our tax laws. That's not the case. Our president will put forward ideas of what he wants in tax laws, but at the end of the day, our U.S. Congress is who makes our tax laws. Okay, so the House of Representatives and the Senate is who's going to come up with the tax laws. The president has to sign it into law, obviously, at the end of the day, but the people writing them is actually our U.S. Congress. Now, our tax laws in the United States is crazy long. It's over 74,000 pages long. So I had a math kid and measure it out once with how thick a piece of paper is, and they figured that it would stack basically the height of a door frame. All right, so you think of your door in your bedroom or kitchen door or something like that. If you stacked our entire tax law, it would stack up from the floor to the top of the door. Okay, so it's very long. It's very hard to understand from the average person. That's why our tax laws are written in a way that the more you make, the more they're going to take, the more money you're going to pay in taxes. All right. When that tax law gets so long, you can find little loopholes, they call it, in the system where you can, hey, I'm going to pull this page out and I'm going to use that little loophole in the system that's going to allow me to pay less in taxes. All right. But the average person isn't going to understand how to read all that to find those loopholes. So usually it's a person who can hire that good attorney to read through that, find those loopholes. So even though the more money you're making, you can find little ways that you can pay a little less in taxes as you make more money. All right, so we're going to go through different types of taxes. So the first type is called a direct progressive tax. Direct tax just means it's being paid directly to the government. Okay. Progressive is the idea that as something gets larger, it's progressing. All right. So the two ways you want to look at this with taxes is the higher value or the higher income. So in other words, the more money you make, the more you're going to pay in taxes. The higher value of something that you're buying or you own, the more it's going to cost you in taxes. Okay. So we call it a direct progressive tax. You're going to pay it directly to the government, and the value or what you're paying in taxes is going to increase as the value or income increases. Okay, so our two main types or examples of this is one, an income tax. So an income tax, it's direct tax because it comes directly out of your paycheck. And it's a progressive tax because the more you make, the more they take. All right, so that's why it's a direct progressive tax. So these are going to be the big money makers for our federal and state levels. All right, mostly for the federal government. This is where the federal government makes the majority of its money to pay for and fund the things that the federal government needs to fund. Okay, so if you have a pay stub, if you have a job, you'll look at your pay stub and you'll see federal income tax withheld, state income tax withheld, and this is ultimately your main direct progressive tax that you guys will pay. Then the other type, example 2 of a direct progressive tax, is our property tax. So again, it increases with value. So if you own a piece of land, a building, a house, as the value of that property goes up, you're going to owe more in taxes on that particular piece of property or that house or that building or that land. Okay, so again, it's a direct tax because you pay it directly to the government. It's a progressive tax because it's going to increase in tax with the value of that property. Okay. Then I did have a property tax bill just to show you guys what it looks like. So I'll show you that. So this is what a property tax bill would look like. So you just can see on the list here of everything a property tax bill goes to. All right. So the total amount was $1,600. This is an old one from when I lived in a condo in the town of Oak Forest some time ago now. So you can see that's going to be paid 2 installments. This is a second installment. So you pay that dollar amount 2 times. But this is what I wanted you guys to see is what property taxes go to. So you can see here some miscellaneous stuff, things like mosquito spray. All right, so it was near the forest reserve, so they went around and sprayed for mosquitoes. The library, Tinley Park District. All right, so these are the things that would be in the miscellaneous. The biggest thing that is going to come out of property taxes is that section for school taxes. So wherever you live, you're going to pay towards probably some community college in your area, the high school district, grade school district. Sometimes they're all one district, sometimes they're separate districts, as you can see on this one. But that's going to be the largest amount taken out of your property taxes to pay for public schools. Okay. And then the municipality and township taxes, you can see, is where your roads and your, when it comes to like police and fire protection, would come out of that section. Okay. So this is just an example of a property tax bill, so you can see how it would look in, when you are paying those property taxes. Okay, so we already went through that. This is the largest moneymaker for your local governments. So this is how your towns of Joliet or Shorewood, wherever you live, are going to pay for the things that they need to pay for in those communities. All right, and then the other type of tax we'll talk about is called an indirect regressive tax. So indirect means you're going to be paying it through someone else. Okay, so you're not paying it directly to the government. You're gonna send money one place, and then they'll send the money to the government. Regressive sounds like it's the opposite of progressive. All right, so a lot of times my students will think, oh, it's going to go down in value. Okay, it's not really the case. I want you guys to, as I go through the example of sales tax, this should make more sense. All right, so what regressive tax means, the definition of it is all income levels pay the same rate. So no matter how much you make, you're going to pay the same rate of taxes in this type of tax. All right, so it's indirect regressive. And our main example is what we would call a sales tax. So many of us bought stuff or have bought stuff, so we've all paid sales tax. So when you think of sales tax, think of it as a regressive tax, because when you go to the store, they're not asking you how much did you make a year and then charge you a sales tax based on your income. All right, that would be a progressive tax. Regressive is the fact that we all pay the same sales tax, whether you make 20 grand a year or you make $100,000 a year. All right, it's called a regressive tax because that sales tax for someone making $10,000 or $20,000 a year is a lot smaller percent of their income than if you make $100,000 a year. All right, so if you're buying something and you have a, let's just say it's a $100 sales tax on some stuff you're buying. Well, $100 to a person making 10 grand or 20 grand a year is a bigger deal than to a person making $100,000 a year. All right, so as you make more money, the tax is taking up a smaller percent of your income. Okay, so that's the idea of a regressive tax. As you make more money, the tax takes up less of your income. So some terms that we usually associate with sales tax is a general or selective tax. General is just the basic tax on all basic goods. Selective tax would be when the governments are going to put a specific tax, a larger tax usually, on certain goods like alcohol, cigarettes. I guess in the state of Illinois, we could add marijuana to that as well, because these are things that the government's going to say they don't want you using. All right, so that's why they're going to tax it more, but they just know that it's an easy money maker. If they increase the tax on alcohol, cigarettes, or marijuana, are people going to stop using those products? Probably not. All right, so they know that they can make more money off those products by increasing the taxes on them. Okay. Other selective taxes that have come about, and some, if you guys remember last year, 2 years ago now, Cook County tried doing like a pop tax. So a special tax on all soda products, right? So Pepsi at stores, when you bought it at the grocery store or restaurant, you paid more in taxes on those soda products. I know California has done stuff with like selective taxes on things like Happy Meals. All right, so kids meals, if you go to a fast food place, you're going to pay more in a tax on kids meals because they're telling you that you shouldn't be buying that type of food for your child. It's unhealthy. but they know that the average person isn't going to notice an extra 50 cents, let's say, tax on a Happy Meal. And if there's millions of people buying Happy Meals every day, it's a lot of extra money the government's making in taxes. Okay, so that would be an example of selective taxes. All right, and then this is the largest money maker for the state government. So our state governments are going to make their big incomes off of sales tax. So when things are being bought and sold within the state of Illinois or other states that you live in. All right, so a couple other tax things to know, just to go down the list here. A W-2 is what you guys will get from your bosses to fill out your tax return. So some of you guys have already gone through this. And a W-2 is what's going to identify how much you made in money, in income, how much you've paid in taxes from January 1st, all right, to December 31st of that given year. All right, so that's where you'll get all the information from in order to go fill out your tax document called a 1040. All right, so once you have your W-2s, you can go ahead and fill out your 1040 tax return with the federal government, the state of Illinois, and then you will get that money back. Okay, so that is our information on taxes. On the next video, we'll go through pay stubs and the definitions of a lot of terms when it comes to pay stubs, and then I'll go through a worksheet with you guys on how to read a pay stub.